Hi, everybody, and thank you for tuning into this afternoon's webinar. Apologies for the delay. We had a few technical issues on the back end. My name is Candace Williams, and I am the Director of Policy Research and Strategic Initiatives at New England Board of Higher Education. Today, we are conducting the second of 6 state-based presentations based on our recent initiative, Upskilling New England, Bridging the Gap Between Educators and Employers. And today, we'll share data and findings focused on Vermont. I'll be joined by Charlotte Pizer, Policy and Research Analyst here at the New England Board of Higher Education, as well as Stephen Gordon, who is a true example of New Englanders' tendencies to have lived and worked in more than one of our region's states. He is the CEO of Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, and prior to joining BMH in 2011, he served as president of Good Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, Massachusetts, as chief administrative officer for Children's Hospital Boston, running the Waltham campus, as well as previously serving as vice president for physicians and business development at Newton Wellesley Hospital in Massachusetts, and the former CEO of Parkland Hospital in Derry, New Hampshire. We're also joined by Tiffany Cuney, the Associate Dean of Workforce Education at the Community College of Vermont. Tiffany's work in corporate training and workforce development includes curriculum design, business outreach, workshop facilitation, course instruction, and instructor training. She also works with trainers, teachers, graduate and undergraduate students to improve instructional practices and assessment strategies. Due to all of the above, we were privileged to have Tiffany participate in our Regional Thinkers meeting on upskilling in September. So the New England Board of Higher Education, or NEBHE as we call it, works to support the 6 New England states to address common challenges and bring action to shared opportunities in higher education and workforce development. It was founded in 1955, and many of you may know it for its sort of key program called the Regional the Regional Student Program, or Tuition Break. And we also work to administer SARA, the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement for Online Education in New England. Charlotte and I represent the policy and research team, and we do a lot of work to disseminate data, best practices, and also to secure additional grant funds for our states to conduct sort of innovative convenings, programs, and projects. And in mid-2019, NEBHE launched Upskilling New England, Bridging the Gap Between Educators and Employers, with support from Strada Education Network. We convened stakeholders from across the region to identify the need for upskilling and challenges related to implementing such programs, to reveal best practices in developing and delivering upskilling programs and partnerships, and to bolster such efforts with recommendations for state policy too. As I noted earlier, today we are sharing our findings from this initiative with a particular focus on Vermont. In the coming weeks, we will release additional webinars with partners from other New England states. And you can also find our previous conversation with Jason Judd, the Executive Director for Educate Maine, on our website. I will note, if you have any questions about the presentation, any questions for Tiffany or Stephen, please feel free to pop them in the question and answer tab, and we'll also be sure to share our slides with everyone after the webinar as well. So I do want to start off by addressing the elephant in our lives, which is COVID-19. The white paper on which this webinar is based was largely authored prior to the onset of the COVID-19 global pandemic. And while the implications of the findings we'll share today have always been significant, we believe that they are even more important now more than ever. Among our discoveries, we note that the populations most in need of upskilling are the least likely to receive such opportunities. The economic shock caused by the spread of the coronavirus has only accelerated the vulnerabilities of these individuals, most notably and underemployed, low-wage and hourly workers throughout the country and in New England. According to Strada Education Network's regular public viewpoint survey, less than half of Americans have access to the training that they'd like to receive. We have yet to understand the full impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, both on our own lives and on the economy, and we do not yet fully know how our state and federal governments will respond in terms of financial support for education and training providers or policies on job creation. If we use the Great Recession as a barometer, we can estimate that post-secondary education institutions, particularly community colleges, will likely bear much of the weight for preparing individuals to go back to work and fill new types of jobs. In New England, unemployment rates peaked at an average of 9% in 2010, and two-year colleges experienced an 8% increase in enrollment. Notably, this period also represented an inflection point where the number of sub-baccalaureate program completions or certificate programs and in demand-driven sectors such as biomedical sciences, computer sciences, and precision production more than doubled across the region. It is possible that we could see similar patterns arise in the near future as the U.S. economy recovers from the coronavirus. Surveys by NEBHE and by Strada Education Network show that an interest in short-term training programs is strong. And certainly colleges and universities must display a degree of nimbleness that exceeds the efforts of prior decades. They'll have to respond to the needs of a broader array of students, including adult learners, who are likely to turn to short-term online methods of gaining industry-validated knowledge and skills. At the same time, collaboration between post-secondary education, employers, and local and state governments must turn a new page to act quickly. Mitigating the likelihood of a full-blown recession or even a short-term depression will depend on prioritizing the acquisition of in-demand, automation-resistant skills and credentials by New England's out-of-work individuals and at-risk incumbent workers. There are a number of factors at play alongside of the impact of the pandemic on our regional higher education landscape and economy. For one, the age and demographics of the region call for new strategies to meet the fast-changing needs of the labor market and ensure that the region remains a top choice for people to live and work. With fewer high school graduates entering the college and career pipeline, it's important that we optimize existing human capital on and underemployed adults, individuals traditionally underserved by higher education and workforce training, and recent immigrants. You see here, Vermont is the dark green bar at the bottom of this graph. Vermont's projected decline in the number of high school graduates is 15% by 2032, which is right at the regional average, and less severe than the projected decline in the number of high school graduates than New Hampshire and Connecticut, who will experience more than a 20% decline in this group of students. Across the region, higher education institutions, workforce training providers, and employers must work together to develop a system of learning that meets individuals where they are and allows for continuous upgrading of skills and knowledge. In doing so, we'll be bridging the gap between the supply and demand of individuals with needed post-secondary credentials. In Vermont, over 53% of adults have a post-secondary credential, while up to 65% of jobs will require one. And when I say credential, I mean anything from a short-term credential like a certificate or a badge up through an associate degree, bachelor's degree, and graduate degree. We see that the share of folks with a post-secondary credential in Vermont is just above the national average. However, when compared to the nation and other New England states, Vermonters are less likely to hold a short-term credential as their most advanced post-secondary credential. Vermont also has a historically unique economy with a mix of industries that require quite specialized knowledge and skills, which aren't necessarily gained through higher education. Relative to the rest of the country, Vermont has a high share of jobs and industries related to electrical components and animal and dairy production. Yet many of the industries most unique to Vermont are in decline. And we see occupations requiring college degrees growing quickly in Vermont, particularly in the fields of healthcare and IT. The number of jobs in computer systems design, for example, are expected to grow 15% by 2029, which relates to 600 new job openings. And the average wage for these jobs in Vermont is over $120,000 per year. We also see that some of the most in-demand qualifications, which also often relate to post-secondary education and training, include nurse practitioners, LPNs, CNAs, and pharmacy techs. To make sure that Vermont can respond to the changing mix of growing industries and available jobs, we need to increase access to and completion of post-secondary credentials for over 40,000 Vermonters. And remember that figure because we will come back to it. In terms of access, we most certainly should be conscientious of geography. People whose highest degree is a high school diploma are more likely to live in the Northeast Kingdom, whereas those who hold a post-secondary credential, such as an associate degree or higher, tend to live in the Burlington and Montpelier areas. And there's a correlation here to the geographic distribution of jobs requiring a credential. This also impacts how colleges are able to partner with employers to offer students things like work-based learning opportunities in emerging fields, for example. At the end of the day, Vermonters across the state need tools to adapt to the changing skills needs and ensure career longevity through access to lifelong learning opportunities. So prior to the onset of COVID-19, we received some consumer insights data from Strada Education Network, broken out by state, which shows that one in three adults in Vermont perceive the need for additional education to advance in their careers. However, as I stated earlier, we know that the impact of COVID-19 on people's employment status is also changing the way they're thinking about education and training opportunities. According to Strada's weekly public viewpoint survey, 56% of Americans have either lost their jobs or had their hours or income reduced. And 1 in 3 believe that they would need more education to find a comparable job, on par with Vermont's perceived need for additional education. However, for millennials and Generation X, this belief is most pronounced across the nation. And this also mirrors trends that we see in Vermont. The demand for career advancing education is particularly strong among young adults, and we infer that they are responding to labor market demand. The difference between the 18 to 24-year-olds and older adults in Vermont is more severe than what we see in the rest of New England. There's also a bit of variation by attainment level, with the perceived need for additional education highest among those with an associate degree. Now, you'll remember that an additional 40,000 Vermonters must have a post-secondary credential to be prepared for future jobs. If we apply this survey data, we can count over 110 individuals who perceive the need for additional career-connected education in Vermont. So this means that given the right mix of education and training opportunities, employer partnerships, certainly marketing, Vermont is well on its way to meeting its attainment goal. Digging deeper allows us to confirm additional hypotheses. As population growth among white people slows across our region and including in Vermont, education and training opportunities should respond to the needs of historically underrepresented groups like Black and Hispanic individuals, albeit small groups in absolute numbers in northern New England. 3 in 5 Black people in Vermont see the need for additional education, and 7 in 10 Hispanic people in Vermont do as well, over double the rate of their white peers. Furthermore, individuals working in healthcare, life sciences, and IT are apt to see the need for more education and training. So the question is, how do colleges and employers alike respond? There's a lot of opportunity to set the conditions now to support Vermont's employers, particularly in the healthcare sector, and build upon Vermont's relatively high rates of post-secondary education attainment. Even at this relatively early stage of the global pandemic, many of the conditions linked to the recommendations made in this white paper already exist. For example, we now are certain that individuals can adapt quickly to digital methods of teaching, learning, and working. Current and prospective students' expectations of higher education are changing. Deficiencies in our labor market have been revealed, such that the need for transparent education and career pathways is newly clarified. And we can no longer ignore inequities faced by people of color and low-wage hourly workers. We believe that upskilling is a key strategy to meet the needs of current and future members of our workforce, our employers, and our higher education institutions. And with that, I will turn it over to Charlotte to discuss the findings of our upskilling initiative.
So you're probably wondering, after all of this, what is upskilling? In the fewest words, to upskill is to gain additional or alternate skills that will translate to advancement in the workforce. The Aspen Institute's Upskill America initiative defines upskilling by 3 key opportunities and outcomes: employer training, credentials, and college degrees. Upskilling via employer training refers to employers providing or partnering with education institutions to provide retraining and upskilling opportunities for incumbent workers. Upskilling can also take place by way of attaining a credential value or a verification of an individual's skill set or qualification by a third party like a trade association. Lastly, an individual may upskill by attaining a college degree, ideally with the financial assistance of his or her employer. Upskilling is important across sectors. For workers, upskilling can directly translate to increased wages and or a promotion. For employers, upskilling is an important tool to enhancing work product and retaining workers. Additionally, it is more cost-effective to upskill an incumbent worker than to recruit a new employee. Educators benefit from upskilling because by forming partnerships with employers, they not only assist their students in job placement, they also make themselves a more sustainable institution because through innovative program development and successful partnerships with industry, institutions widen their application pools. Policymakers play a crucial role in upskilling through creating policies supportive of the aforementioned entities, and most important, our labor force. But also by creating policies that support the creation and sustainability of upskilling programs, policymakers open educational opportunities to more citizens who in turn make greater contributions to our economy. The next question is, where should upskilling take place to be most effective? According to the Strada Consumer Insights data, New England adults are extremely likely to enroll in education and training through their employer. The next most desired source of education is community college, then four-year college. Again, this is all pre-corona, so let's just keep that in mind. So if employers develop upskilling programs or partner with education providers to develop upskilling programs, workers are more likely to take advantage, acquire higher skill levels, increase their wages, contribute more to their employer, increase output, become a better consumer, and on and on and on. In September 2019, NEBHE, with the support of Strada Education Network, convened a thinkers meeting. At the meeting were representatives from colleges and universities, employers, both large and small, state policy, industry associations, workforce boards, and other stakeholders. Through robust discussion around best practices and opportunities in the upskilling space, we came up with 3 models for upskilling, which of course can be tailored to individual businesses of varying sizes. As we've emphasized, the implementation of these models is of increasing importance in our current circumstances. Partnerships between employers and education providers will be especially pertinent when we begin to return to normalcy and rebuild our economy. The first is in-house upskilling. This model works best for large employers with significant resources to dedicate to building and sustaining education and training programs on site. Companies like Amazon and JetBlue have strong in-house upskilling programs, and a bit closer to home, Chimbro Institute in Maine is an exemplar of the in-house model. Chimbro offers high school internships, safety development training, professional trade and craft skills development, apprenticeships, leadership and professional training programs, and more. All of these programs are, quote, tailored to invest in the long-term development and retention of talented, capable leaders at all levels of the company. I should also mention that they provide training for their workers at Chimbro, but also for external companies as well. The second model is a direct employer to institution partnership. Here, an employer seeks the partnership of an institution, or vice versa, to develop a curriculum or program which can be customized or already existing that directly correlates to the employer's skills gaps. Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Hospital in Massachusetts partnered with Bunker Hill Community College to do exactly this. This partnership, called the Employee Career Initiative, delivers free prerequisite courses for careers in allied health. Beth Israel developed these courses with Bunker Hill, who offers them on site, meaning workers do not have to leave the hospital to take classes. This model can work well for mid-sized employers and community colleges that have the capacity to develop customized programming when necessary and or travel to their employer partners to deliver programs. The third and last is an industry-led partnership where an intermediary, which can be a workforce board, an industry association, or the like, helps to connect employers and educators and build and sustain the partnership and subsequent upskilling programs. The Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance, or EMA, is an excellent example of this. EMA is a collective of manufacturing businesses in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, and has established itself as a nonprofit organization and intermediary for member organizations and partnered education providers. EMA reviews its community college partners program offerings to ensure they align with current manufacturing industry needs. It advocates for supportive policies for the advanced manufacturing workforce pipeline, and it is a resource for best practices for employers and education providers. Since integrating employers into the educational pipeline is not a practice universally implemented by educational institutions as of yet, we've narrowed the role of employers into 4 concrete arenas. The first is assessing workforce skills gaps so that they may accurately articulate openings for upskilled or upskilling employees, form partnerships through one of the models previously articulated, or build an educational program in-house, invest in or elevate existing high-quality, effective upskilling programs. With this investment comes the responsibility to advertise upskilling opportunities to employees. We learned from our thinkers meeting that I mentioned before that many employers who offer tuition benefits or additional educational benefits do not actually track who is using them much of the time, and so employees do not even know that this benefit exists, and employers do not know who is actually taking advantage of it. On top of all that, tuition reimbursement specifically is not always the most helpful benefit because it does not mitigate the upfront cost of college. So we have to think a little bit more about this more traditional benefit and elevate the more innovative models that we've touched on. Lastly, employers should, with education providers, standardize skills language. This would be most effective, as I said, in collaboration with education partners so that job skills and course outcomes are aligned in such a way that the pathway from education and training program to a job is clear both to the student and the institution, as well as the employer. We're now going to move on to some recommendations for state policy solutions. In our white paper, we've articulated 3 buckets of policy recommendations: delivery models, partnerships, and state policy. For the purposes of this webinar, we will focus just on the state policy recommendations. It's important to note here that we will that we created these recommendations with an equity lens. And in fact, we believe these recommendations actually facilitate increased equity and inclusion in upskilling programs. The first policy recommendation is to implement policies that require validation of prior learning or expansion of validation of prior learning. By recognizing and documenting prior learning, whether through work experience, military experience, or previous academic experience, education providers shorten time to in-demand credentials, which workers can achieve through upskilling programs. We're going to focus here on College Credit for Heroes, which is specifically for military veterans, because we believe this model can be translated and scaled for non-military individuals. College Credit for Heroes was initiated in 2011 and is intended to maximize awarded credit for military experience. CCH is built on two primary pillars: an extensive network of participating schools, which is currently at over 50 colleges and systems in Texas, and the development of accelerated curricula. The Texas legislature allocated $5 million to launch the program in 2011, and it was made permanent in 2015 through SB 806. CCH has completed thousands of evaluations of military experience, which has resulted in an average of 25 college credits per veteran. Codification of this initiative has significantly increased participation of institutions, which has in turn increased student participation. The second state policy recommendation is for policymakers to implement incentives for employers to prioritize upskilling as a key business strategy through state-issued grants or tax breaks. An example is the Massachusetts Workforce Training Fund, a program out of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, to which organizations can apply for grants up to $250,000 to train current and newly hired workers in topics like project management, software and IT skills, and machine setup and operation. This model works well because not only is it government supported, businesses must pay membership dues and for-profit companies automatically pay into the fund, so there's widespread knowledge of this resource. The last state policy recommendation is to develop accessible, transparent, and stackable credential pathways so that all stakeholders can easily understand how upskilling programs translate to promotional structures and/or post-secondary credentials. In 2019, Vermont enacted H533, which requires the Department of Labor to collaborate with post-secondary education and training providers, government agencies, and employers to recruit adults into educational training programs, locate funding subsidies for participants, and map pathways from high-value credential programs to high-quality job outcomes. We don't have comprehensive results from this initiative just yet because it was enacted so recently, but we hope to provide those once those emerge. With that, I will turn it over to our wonderful panelists, Tiffany Cuney from the Community College of Vermont, and Steve Gordon, who is from the Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, and they will chat about their role in upskilling in Vermont, as well as the partnership between their two organizations. So Tiffany, I will stop sharing now and have you go on and share.
So this is a joy for us to be here today. I'm happy to be working with NEBHE and have Steve here with us. And like they've already introduced us, but like they've said, I'm the Associate Dean of Workforce at the Community College of Vermont, and really happy to have Steve here with me, who is the President and CEO of Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. I'll go through really quickly just some things that CCV is doing with workforce, and I'll hand it over to Steve to talk about some of the pieces that we do together. So just as a quick piece and reminder of CCV, probably mostly Vermonters here, so you know and understand us. We're the only community college in the state of Vermont, but we do have 12 locations statewide and online. And our size is there on the screen. You can see about 5,500 students that we serve each semester, 95% of which are Vermonters. And our average age is 26, and we have just under 2,000 dual enrolled high school students as well. So the strategies I'm going to talk about today are some of the things that were mentioned both by Candace and Charlotte earlier. Our work in industry recognized credentials, registered apprenticeship, I'm going to talk about some models that best meet business needs, including accelerated self-paced and remote courses, and the idea of using stackable credentials to give people several on and off ramps and pathways towards degree. CCV has several industry recognized credentials that we offer through the college, and then we have several programs that lead to industry recognized credentials. These are really important for us in our work with businesses because they align directly with the needs of the business and the occupations that are available for people to move into. Some of the examples of industry recognized credentials that Vermonters can attain right at CCV are the Association of Rehabilitation Educators, or ACRE, the National Association of Public Bookkeepers, the Certified Production Technician. We have several others as well. And in addition to that, students can take coursework and then go to another accrediting body to take a national assessment, such as the Pharmacy Tech Certificate leading to the PTCB, or the Medical Assisting Program that leads to the CCMA. Registered apprenticeship is another of our approaches to work with businesses directly on the needs that they have for very specific occupations. Apprenticeship is really vital to us because it's an employer-driven model. So we sit down with employers and talk about the competencies and skill set that is needed for a very specific occupation, and then we build a program based on that. These important kind of like pieces of apprenticeship, of course, business involvement from the beginning, an on-the-job training program that lines up specifically with the occupation, related instruction that goes along with it. There are always rewards for skill gains. That can be wage increase after somebody gains a credential or finishes a course. And there's always a nationally recognized credential attached to the registered apprenticeship. CCV has become a sponsor of apprenticeship as of 2018 to take some of that heavy lift away from employers when it comes to working with Department of Labor and some of those pieces. Our new apprenticeships in 2018 were medical assisting, pharmacy tech, and manufacturing production technician. This allows us to have employers focusing more on the things that they want to do, which is mentoring and on-the-job competencies, and we deal with the other pieces at the college. We are looking to expand further into things such as medical billing and coding, bookkeeping, and various occupations in information technology. The idea is to really expand apprenticeship beyond the trades where they've done very well with apprenticeship for a very long time. So I'll just really quickly go through a few examples with Vermont businesses that we're working with in the state and the different approaches that they've been able to take in order to best meet their needs of upskilling their current workforce. MSI is a manufacturer in Morrisville, Vermont. And what we've done with them is use both an accelerated course model and an apprenticeship model to upskill their current incumbent workforce. In an accelerated course model, students can take what would have been a traditional 15-week semester and compress it down into a shorter period of time. So they currently have 16 of their production employees taking coursework. They took an accelerated class March through May. And I know you see those dates and think, wow, there was a lot going on in March through May of this year, but they persisted through that and were able to take those courses that were they were originally, even though they were accelerated, happened in the facility, as Charlotte mentioned, is a really great strategy. And those things were moved online when things really took a turn. Also, these accelerated courses are the first courses in the manufacturing production apprenticeship. So they're pairing up two models together. At the end of these two courses, all of the participants will have earned 6 college credits and 4 industry credentials and be well on their way to an apprenticeship, finishing their apprenticeship. Another model that we're using is self-paced online. So Edland is a manufacturer of cutting-edge kitchen equipment in Burlington, and they are upskilling incumbent workers using this self-paced model where students are able to enroll in online courses and then do them in the pacing that works for them. They don't have to attend once a week for 15 weeks in the traditional format. They can do 3 weeks in 1 week and then take some time off and do the rest. They can wait and start 7 weeks in and finish it. It does have to be completed within the semester, but it can happen in the pacing that works best for the student. This really helps remove barriers for Vermont's workers to get the work done in the timing that works for them. Another model that we're using at Central Vermont Medical Center is a train and retain model. So taking current incumbent employees who are already working for the organization and train them into a new position. We're doing this with 17 of their LNAs who are all taking the prerequisite courses for nursing. So they are LNAs who will become LPNs throughout the program. This is also a pre-apprenticeship model as it moves these people directly into an apprenticeship in nursing. And got to see the faces of the students, so here they all are. They as well have gone through this, both being healthcare workers and also going through this during COVID. They started in summer of last year and have completed as of this semester and are moving into their nursing program at Vermont Tech. Another strategy we're using is live remote learning. So I think that, traditionally people thought, well, you can either be online or you can be face-to-face, or you can do a mixture of those two things. This is being able to meet with your instructor weekly live. And so this helps people be able to, we can have great teachers anywhere in the state that can be piped into anyone at any time. And so in this particular program, we have a registered pharmacist who meets with her students weekly over a live webinar. They have discussions, they can have lecture, and then they move into their online learning throughout the week and meet with her again the following week. And this has helped people take their coursework from home, from work, wherever they are, they can log in and meet with their instructor. The last thing I'll talk about before I hand it over to Steve is the idea of nested programs, which allow for stackable credentials. So you can see here just the example of our pharmacy tech program. The pharmacy tech apprenticeship is 3 courses, and on-the-job training includes 9 college credits. That's nested fully within our pharmacy tech certificate program, which is launching this fall. And that has 8 courses and 24 college credits. And that is nested into our health science associate's degree. This allows for people to have multiple stopping points. They can come back in and they can continue to stack their credentials as they go. That is the same idea with our medical assisting program, our medical assisting apprenticeship, which Steve is going to talk a lot about, the development of our college to career program, which this came from. Medical assisting apprenticeship has 5 courses and on-the-job training and is 15 college credits nested in our medical assisting certificate program, which is nested in the health science degree. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve.
Thanks, Tiffany. Can you guys hear me? Great. So for those of you who don't know Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, we're a 60-bed community independent hospital located on the borders of New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And that's important to note because our employees basically, other than Vermont, come from northern Massachusetts as well as western New Hampshire and the Keene area. So we're in a very highly competitive market as it relates to employees and recruiting and retaining our employees. Next slide. So one of the challenges we had, a very significant challenges, recruiting and retaining medical assistants. And medical assistants are critical, especially in a hospital like ours, where we basically employ the majority of the medical staff in our communities that we serve. And if you don't have MAs, you have a major challenge for physicians to be productive, nurse practitioners to be as productive as they can be, because the medical assistants are the ones who arrive the patients, do the preliminary testing for the patients, take blood pressures, things of that nature. And when you don't have those folks in those practices, what you're left with are the physicians that have to do that, or the clinicians, and that's not a good place to be. We had a very significant turnover rate of over 50%. Again, that's reflective of the market we were in. And we really needed to come up with a better way to recruit and retain our medical assistants. So I met with Joyce Judy, this is going back several years ago, as president of CCV, and I said, can we work together to pull together a program that meets your needs from the community college standpoint, but also meet the needs of the hospital, which are very significant. And we worked very closely together to put together a program that we could offer to our communities. Next slide. So again, this is the roles of the MAs, and any of you who go to a physician office know how important these folks are. The other point I might want to make is on the medical assistants. We've also expanded their role for them to become scribes. So as most of you know, we're all pretty much on an electronic medical record. And in order for the physician or the clinician, nurse practitioner, or the PA to have a direct conversation with the patient, the scribes, who are also medical assistants, will actually enter the information into the electronic medical record. So that's another enlargement of the scope of a medical assistant moving forward, and that we've used very successfully at Brattleboro. And it gives that face-to-face contact between the clinician and the patient, which a lot of times can get lost if the clinician is looking down at a computer and entering information. So that's a newly expanded role for the medical assistants. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we got together, and I personally got together with Judy to come up with how can we put this program together. And there was a lot of interest on the part of the folks at CCV in Brattleboro. Worked on had stakeholder meetings, a program design. We've done a lot of joint advertising and outreach on our hospital website internally within the hospital. And then obviously we launched the program, and we've always done, every year we do things a little bit differently. And what we've learned a lot from that first year is really in the interviewing process for candidates that come into this program. Because one of the things, we've put a lot of skin in the game from the hospital, that we pay for the education for eight of the MAs. We provide a scholarship. And we obviously, at the end of their program, guarantee them employment here at the hospital within one of the medical groups. Next slide, please. So this goes through some of the stakeholder meetings, and that really puts the academic piece in with the hospital piece. And what's really important for us in the medical practices is to give the students some real world experience working in a medical practice. And not only does it give them that experience, but also gets them interested in what practice type would they want to go into? Is it primary care? Is it pediatrics? Is it family medicine? Is it orthopedics? Is it general surgery? So it's a good opportunity for them to see and experience the different types of practices that we sponsor within our community. Next slide. So here's the program design. It goes through, you know, the different weeks as part of the curriculum. But again, the key piece is what I think differentiates ourselves from all other kind of medical assisting programs is the real life experience and real work experience that the students get as being part of the medical practices. It gives them some reality of what they're learning in the classroom and can apply that within the practice itself. Next slide. And then I don't know, Tiffany, if you want to make any more comments on the curriculum, the structure. 15 weeks of classroom, 3 weeks of the internship. We also, the hospital sponsors at the end of the program, after I think a couple of months, they sit for being certified for a medical assistant program, which is very important. Most hospitals and medical practices require your medical assistants to be actually certified in medical assisting, and we pay for that. And we have study groups for the medical assistants. And for the most part, I think we're probably about 98% pass rate, which is great for the medical assistants. And then you see match day, kind of like going into an internship or a residency. The students get to be matched within one of the specialties that they might be interested in, that we have openings within. But what's really nice is that they've already had that experience working with the practices here at Brattleboro, and really have a feel for each of the practices' culture, because the culture of general surgery might be different than primary care. So it really gives them a great exposure to that. And then, as I said, we start the employment process here. Next slide. This talks about the, and you see some of the examples of advertising. What's been really great for the hospital is we've had a number of medical assistants go through the program that were high school students, graduated from high school. During high school, they were working in food services here, in the servery, in the tray line, or passing trays to patients. This gave them an entree now to a health profession and really gave them a glide path to continue their education, whether it's an LPN, whether it's an RN. And we've seen, and I personally have seen, a number of our dietary aides now become medical assistants, but also now becoming LPNs, and now, since we've gotten this far into the program, RNs. And that's great for our community. It's great for the staff who have worked here. We have a lot of families that have had their children go through this program, as well as older adults too, that are looking at a different type of career in healthcare. So this has been a really important piece of this program's success, is on the advertising, the internal interest that we've culminated here at the hospital. Next slide, please. So this just goes through the launch of the program. And as I said, I think we had a 50% success rate after a year of our first class. And I think the folks that were involved in the interview to get into the program, you're interviewed not only by the hospital, but obviously by CCV staff. And we learned a lot through that process, the folks involved in that, and what are the successful attributes of folks that are interested in becoming medical assistants. So we've done a much better job over the last couple of years in terms of the success rate of folks that have continued working here at the hospital, but also advancing into a higher level of credentialing. Next. And of course, a picture, of course, everyone wants to see. Joyce Judy is all the way on the, I guess, my right, everyone's right, in a fleece there, and some of our instructors from our own program here at the hospital and our MAs. The other program, the other area we had a significant challenge in was environmental services, housekeeping services here at the hospital. And it was very difficult to recruit and as well retain. And we worked with CCV, DOL to develop a training program specific for the hospital, and that has also been very successful. Next slide, please. So again, we applied the same steps that we did with the CCV medical assisting program, and which led to very successful recruitment. And I think we graduated 8, and we still have a number of them are still here. And what's really great is it's an entry level. Most of these are entry level positions, and we don't expect people to be here and stay as an environmental services or a medical assistant for the rest of their career. What's great is to see them continue to advance. And that's what's also occurred with the environmental services program as well. Next slide. And again, same type of process, although this one was a little different because it wasn't just us and CCV. We involved Department of Labor as well as Creative Workforce Solutions Group. And then here's the program design for the environmental services. Next slide. Again, our timeline as well. Again, it's very, very similar to what the success was for the environmental was for the medical assisting program. Next slide. And again, similar to what we've done is always joint outreach. We find that it's not just the hospital, it's not just CCV in this situation, it's also Department of Labor. So, and this gives some examples of some of the folks that have graduated from our environmental services program. And now, similar to our friends up at Central Vermont Medical Center up in Barre, Vermont, we're looking at the LPN program as well here at BMH. So I think I touched on pretty much all of these. I think what's really important is for the hospital and the employer to really have that skin in the game to assist with scholarships to be engaged in the interviewing process for folks that are interested in the program, as well as constantly tweaking the program, which we've done over the last several years here at Brattleboro. So that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And if you have questions about those pieces, please feel free to contact me at workforce@ccv.edu, and I can connect you with the person that is the best to answer your question. I think we'll hand it back to NEBHE and see what's next.
Thank you so much to you both. This has been so interesting to take a look into this partnership as well as other initiatives, both at CCV and the hospital. We have just a couple of questions from our audience. I know we're running up against time, so we will quickly go through them. Just a quick one for you, Steve. For the medical assistant program, what is the cost to the participant?
Well, for the scholarships that we provide, there is no cost.
Right.
We provide a full scholarship. And Tiffany, do you remember what is it, 8,000?
Yep, it's 8,000. Yep.
8,000. And you know, we did a cost benefit analysis. We found that we're actually to the good of that kind of investment, as opposed to all the advertising, whether it's on Indeed, as well as the retention piece is a lot better when we find that folks go through the CCV program, and they have ownership both at CCV as well as at the hospital. So I think it's a great bang for the buck for us. Turnover and recruitment is very expensive in a very competitive environment, as I mentioned.
Right.
It's really amazing too that the hospital has invested that money in people prior to. So it's just really, it was an innovative piece for us to work with the hospital being willing to give those scholarships out at the start of the program, instead of waiting until after something was over to give it back. And so we've been really excited to have that opportunity to work with them on that.
And just to build on this a bit more, concerning your partnership, how long did it take to get these programs up and running, and what do you think are some characteristics both of CCV and of Brattleboro Memorial Hospital that have made the partnership successful?
So from when I talked to Joyce Judy, we were able to stand up this program because CCV had already had their own MA program. This was a little different that we now partnered with the hospital. And when I first talked to Joyce, we were able to put together the program. I think it was like 3 to 4 months. It was very, very rapid because you already had the curriculum from the college. Now we complemented that with the scholarships and the clerkships and the employment of the hospital. So we stood it up very, very quickly.
And in terms of the sustainability, how do you think this partnership is unique in terms of its success rate and the characteristics of both your organizations that keep it going?
Well, I think it's hugely sustainable because we will always need MAs or environmental services aides. So, and I think it's also differentiates us in the marketplace to competitor hospitals. That you can come here, you can work with CCV, become employed here, and grow within the healthcare professions. And you know, that's a differentiator for us.
Absolutely. Well, we have time to just answer one more question, and this is more upskilling concept related. A couple of folks have asked how career and technical education centers factor into this. And I just want to emphasize that though we are focusing on a two-year institution for this webinar, CTEs, other alternative education providers are also key players in this and should absolutely seek partnerships with employers and vice versa, because those programs are extremely valuable as well, especially for Vermont, where CTE centers are particularly successful and dynamic. that is all we have time for today. Thank you both so very much again for joining us, and thank you to our audience for joining us. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me, to any of us on the webinar. That's all I've got for you. Please stay tuned, and we'll have more in this series if you are interested in learning about other states in this arena. Thank you all.
Thank you. Stay well.
Thank you.
Bye.